Step into the realm of limitless imagination with Beyond the Art, where Indigenous creativity knows no bounds. Join us on a captivating journey through Indigenous art and innovation.
Together, let's delve into the depths of imagination, pushing boundaries with guests from diverse sectors of the Native American art world, each sharing their unique creative vision and inspiring journeys.
Join us for exclusive interviews, thought-provoking discussions, and uplifting stories.
Hello, I'm Joe Williams. Welcome back to Beyond the Arts. I'm here with our host, Gray Beaumont Flynn. We're joined today with three filmmakers, Ben West, Alika mteuzi, and Yancey Burns. The three of you, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So really excited to have you here today. The work you're all doing for years now has been fantastic. And I really want to take the opportunity to sit down with you and to just catch up and introduce our audience to the work that you all do. First off, can you share a bit about your backgrounds, introduce yourselves, and what inspired you to get into the work that you're doing?
Sure, I'll go first. My name is Ben West. I'm a filmmaker and a citizen of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma. I met Yancey while making our film Imagining the Indian, the fight against Native American mascotting, which is out now on Apple TV and Amazon. And we developed a great rapport and a friendship, and decided that we wanted to continue to work together. And as a result, we founded Rena Flying Coyote Collective going on 3 years ago, to not only help us along our journey in making film, but to do whatever we can to both encourage and help facilitate other storytellers, native storytellers, work. That led to a project that we're actually out here in Oklahoma shooting as we speak, up in northeastern Oklahoma in Quapaw country. So, yep, a little bit about me. Pass the mic.
Yes. My name is Alika mteuzi. I am an enrolled member of Caddo Nation of Oklahoma, descendant of Cheyenne and Arapaho, originally from the Bay Area, now living between Albuquerque and Los Angeles. I'm a writer, director, and editor, and I studied studio arts at Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe. I butchered that. And I've always been into art, though I don't think I would call it art. Yancey and I think while we had this discussion, art wasn't really an option. It wasn't considered a viable career path when I was a kid. So it came to me officially later in life. And many hours sat in front of the television is, I think, how I just sort of walked into the whole film and creating world. But yeah, I'm here as an editor for the documentary that we're currently working on. And that is me. Yancey.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yancey Burns. I'm a filmmaker, an attorney, and a farmer. So if y'all need any filmmaking, attorney, and or farming done, you let me know. Mm-hmm. I came to the world of filmmaking and storytelling kind of in an indirect path. I knew I wanted a life in social justice, and that led me to about a decade as an attorney. I worked in the public interest, and by about the end of that decade, I was pretty burnt out and wore out from it, and realized that I was really only reaching one person at a time through being an attorney, and I realized that perhaps film was a medium where I could reach more folks and have more of an effect through social justice. It was a big deal to me because I'm from rural Appalachia. The community I'm from in West Virginia during the height of the opiate epidemic had the highest rate of neonatal abstinence syndrome in the world. So for a while, we had more babies born addicted to narcotics than anywhere else in my community in West Virginia. And so I knew I wanted to reach folks and help as much as I can. And I was just blessed to get to the Documentary Film Center at George Washington University that led me to an externship where the first person I met was Ben West. And so I've been very blessed to tell some stories with Ben, and I continue to do so, and we're really enjoying doing so.
So how did Rena Flying Coyote Collective come together? And what are its missions and goals?
So Rena Flying Coyote Collective came together going on 3 years now. It's an nonprofit, native-led nonprofit organization that Yancey and I began together. And it was born out of, Yancey and I met working on Imagining the Indian, which is a film that delves into the fight to eradicate native mascotting in sports, and really uses that as a lens through which to examine all sorts of native representation and misrepresentation in all sorts of media, from film, TV, sports, film, TV, pop culture, literature, the runs the whole gamut. But we were lucky enough to be able to make that film and have Native people be behind it, be the driving force behind it in all ways, really. And we were inspired to start this organization, not only to allow us to continue to tell our stories, but to as much as we can help other Native storytellers to be able to do the same thing. And a little about the origin story of RFCC, Rena Flying Coyote Collective. Rena was my great grandmother, and she raised five boys in Western Oklahoma, Cheyenne. And then died in the Spanish flu in the early 1900s, which resulted in all 5 of those boys being kidnapped and taken to boarding school in Contra, Oklahoma, where they resisted forced assimilation that so many Native peoples endured in that time period. And it is because of the strength, though she was no longer there with them, but the strength that Rena instilled in those boys that allowed them to come out of the other side of that trauma and live fulfilling and successful lives. And she really is emblematic of the reason that my generation and my nephews, who were just named at the Cheyenne Sundance last Sunday, so less than a week ago, she's the reason that our family remains connected to community to this day. And it is in that spirit that we do the work we do at Rena Flying Coyote Collective.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we realized during making and imagining the Indian that, the film is what that project started out as. But as we were touring across North America and beyond with the film, we realized that for storytelling, from our perspective, it was more than just the film itself. We've built Rena Flying Coyote Collective essentially on 4 pillars. The first being the films themselves, which are the stories we're telling. The second being coalition building, because that's such a big part of what we do whenever we do a screening and whenever we talk to communities. We're building coalitions for whatever the call to action is for that project. For Imagining the Indian, it was the end of Native American mascotting. And so we realized that's one of the pillars of RFCC. Another pillar is education, because, Ben knew early on that, films have a limited shelf life. It's just the reality of film. But we wanted this film to be an educational tool that could be used in perpetuity, almost essentially. So educational curriculum building is one of the pillars of RFCC. And then the final pillar, the 4th pillar, is workshopping, because we don't just want to tell our own stories. We want to help facilitate folks telling their own stories as well. And so now we do community workshops where we teach folks how to tell their own stories and how to make their own docs. It's what brought us to Oklahoma this time. It's actually what we're doing with our project in Pitcher, Oklahoma, is using it as a proof of concept for, you can get some friends together, you can spend 4 days shooting, you can spend a week or so at it, and you can tell your own story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's with this, I first had met you both at ATOM a couple of years ago, and from that experience, you've held workshops at ATOM over the last several years, and including October of 2025 and moving forward.
Yeah, that's correct. The workshop started as really just an opportunity to reach folks in a different way, but we realized after the first workshop that there was so much more information we could provide to folks that they needed, because we had folks come up to us after and say, I'd love to do this, but I don't have the money. So we had to really come up with, this is how you can do it on the cheap, or this is how you can do it with grant funding. So for the current 2025 workshop, we brought in a grant writer to help folks do that. And folks came up to us and said, I'd love to be able to tell my own story, but I really don't know how to get it together. So we realized, maybe we'll bring in a storyboarding artist. So we thought, Joe Williams would be perfect for that. So brought in Joe to help folks with the storyboarding aspect. So really just trying to walk folks through the process and really just tear down any of the gatekeeping between storytelling and documentary film.
Mm-hmm. What really drew me to first speaking with you was Imagining the Indian. That film, first off, it was so well put together. There was a narrative that went through that just kept the watcher tied in all the way through. But second to that is the list of guests in that film. It's literally the who's who of our community. And so, all that said, what motivated the creation of this film? How did this come to pass?
I'll start. So Kevin Blackistone, who is a producer on the film, producer and writer on the film. You also may know him from ESPN's Around the Horn, which so tragically is over. ESPN, I'll look into this camera. Let's get it back. But he writes for the Washington Post. He's a professor at University of Maryland. But he began this project. He'd come to know Suzanne Harjo, my auntie Suzanne Harjo, Cheyenne auntie, who really is one of the lesser known civil rights icons of our era. And it began as a sort of with the intention to profile her work, to highlight the work that she's done, not only when it comes to mascotting, but to land and water rights, to sacred spaces. She's been an advocate, staunch advocate for we Native people, as you know, for decades and decades. And so he sort of conceptualized the project in 2014, but it really didn't have legs. They weren't able to raise money, and so it kind of went on the back burner. And then he approached the current team in 2018, and it was something that having grown up around the likes of Suzanne Harjo and Kevin Gover and my own father, Rick West, who's in the film. I'd been exposed to all of these things from a pretty young age. So, when it came to me, I said, absolutely, I want to be a part of this. I need to be a part of this, provided I can tell this story the right way. We can tell this story the right way. And one of those, one of the things was that this film really needs to come out of Indian country in myriad ways. And so I sat down with my father and the late, great Marshall McKay, to whom the film is dedicated. We lost him in COVID, unfortunately. But I sat down with them and said, I want to do this. And they said, yes, you should do this. And we need to make sure that the film comes out of Indian country. So we are extremely proud that our two executive producers on that film are both sovereign tribal nations in Yochadihi Wintun Nation, and formerly San Manuel Band of Mission Indians. They have just gone back to their ancestral name, which I cannot pronounce yet. So, yes, we were funded out of Indian country, but it's so much more than that. We've got Native crew. We're working with Native crew, and we shot a lot of this during COVID, and Indian country came through in so many ways to help us tell this. Everybody you see on screen in this movie is part of the team that made this movie. Whether it's folks driving hours and hours to a black box studio where we had a dude in a hazmat suit outside, conducting the interview from a laptop because COVID is going on and nobody in the world knows what the hell is happening. So I warned before we got started, I would go on all sorts of tangents, and I've just done that.
It's your show.
Yeah. Well, okay. The inspiration for me personally, and Yancey, he came from a different perspective, and he'll tell you about that. But for me, it was really it was almost an obligation when this opportunity came about to become involved and to do it in the right way, in a good way.
Yeah, for me, I'd been living in Washington, D.C. for a while, and it was just so obvious that the Washington football team was vile and harmful and offensive. But more than that, it was hurting folks. And that's something we really came across during the film is getting to realize how much it was hurting folks and how much research has gone into what that hurt was doing. Joe, you mentioned the roster of folks who appear in the movie. I mean, that's number one, thanks to Ben's incredible network, which is just stellar to say the least. But it's also because we knew that for the film, because this is a sensitive subject matter, we needed to have a diverse array of folks talking about it, because Native folks are not a monolith, and folks have different opinions across the board about this issue. And we knew we needed to capture as many of those as we possibly could. And coming out of it, just to go back to what I was saying about the public health aspect, one of the things that I did not know going into the project, we knew it was wrong, but we didn't know the extent. We started talking to the Dr. Angela Waldens of the world, the Dr. Derek Jennings of the world, the Dr. Stephanie Freibergs of the world. And you start...
The Dr. Amy Wests of the world.
The Dr. Amy West of the world, that's correct. And you start learning about the research that's been done around these mascots, and you understand that there's decades of social science research about it, that we know for a fact that exposure to Native American mascots leads to increased levels of depression amongst Native people, particularly Native youth. We know exposure to Native mascots leads to decreased self-esteem amongst Native people, particularly Native youth. And we know that it leads to higher rates of suicidal ideation amongst Native people, particularly Native youth. And so, learning that and being able to convey that to our audience, because for so long, I think people treated Native mascots as an opinion issue. And we did not want to treat it as an opinion issue with our film, because it is a matter of fact that these mascots are hurting folks.
Well, and that, if I might just piggyback really quickly on that point, we got asked or challenged, I guess, the question. Well, you need to be more thorough about telling both sides of this story. Because there's a misconception that in documentary film, you're supposed to equally weight two sides of an argument, which is idiocy. As Phil Deloria says in the film, there aren't two sides to this issue. It almost comes off from us as like an opinion piece, which again is asinine. I mean, as Yancey says, this is proven. This is factual. It's not wokeness. It's none of those things. And it's time that we recognize that.
How does the film challenge or reshape perceptions of Native American identity and representation, especially since the film has already debuted, and what has been the feedback that's gotten back to you of how this has actually affected the Native American community, but also non-natives and their perception of mascotting?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the ways I think it's addressed conception and misconception of Native peoples is something that Yancey mentioned not too long ago, which is that part of the real damage of mascots is that, yes, they make people feel a certain way. There's no doubt about that. We mentioned science. But Yancey used the term monolith not too long ago. And that's one of the really damaging things that people don't necessarily recognize, is that there is a layer beneath this, which is that, yes, we're Native people are being mocked and ridiculed, and Native mascotting in sports is yet another attempt at erasure, which has been going on since Europeans touched shore here. But there's also, it is reductive. Mascots in sports is reductive and what I mean by that is that there are going on 600 distinct Native communities on this land with their own language, their own culture, their own community, their own ceremony, their own traditions. And when all you think of when you think of Native people is influenced by a Plains war bonnet, a headdress, Plains headdress on a helmet or a jersey or that's incredibly damaging, because that would be appropriate for me as a Cheyenne person, for Alika and me as Plains Indians. But again, it discounts so many other cultures, and really in doing that, sort of makes us it contributes to that caricature that is put out there when it comes to imagery. And it causes people to lump all Native people into just this
homogenized one club.
Right. This one sort of amorphous blob of people, which is insulting. So, and what we hope that the film is effective in kind of addressing those sort of subterranean layers to this, because it's a problem on its face, but there's a whole history to this issue that we hope the film sort of helps illuminate.
And it's interesting. I mean, being in Indian country, so to speak, it's so profound when I talk to people that are non-native in Oklahoma that do not have the understanding of how many federally recognized tribes are in the U.S. They think we're all together here in Oklahoma, that there's no other Indians outside of Oklahoma. It's like, no, we're not big one blob.
Right.
And then I've had those discussions, Washington Redskins, Kansas City Chiefs. What do you think about the Cherokee Jeep? Oh, it's great. It's like, but you're misusing and misappropriating what's something that someone's DNA and what's in them and their beliefs and their culture and their heritage.
Well, I'm sure whoever you're talking to just went off and did a DNA test to see if they were native too.
They bumped their head.
Because then, of course, their opinion is valid on the
Yeah,
Jeep
they have a Cherokee grandmother that was a princess.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I diverged now. Thanks, man.
So the first week in July of 2025, you're in Pitcher, Oklahoma, shooting documentary. Can you talk about what this project is, what brought you all together on this? And we'll start with that question. I have a follow-up though.
Okay. I'll give you the origin story, and then let Alika can now jump in. She wasn't part of Imagining the Indian. We would have loved to have known her then. But we're getting current now, so let's have Yancey and Alika jump in. I'll just give you kind of the genesis of it, which was that 2 years ago, Yancey and I were visiting Quapaw Powwow with our friend Derek Jennings, who's in Imagining the Indian. That's how we came to know him, and he and his family graciously invited us. And he was kind of giving us a tour of the area, which includes Pitcher, Oklahoma, which is this town that mined much of the lead and zinc for World War II, and then just bounced and left it there. So it's an incredibly toxic area. It's a ghost town now. But we were driving through, and it was the 4th of July, and we noticed this one family remaining in Pitcher. It's 4th of July. They're out front, out in their yard around the pool with sparklers and lawn chairs, and they're just kicking it on 4th of July. And it just caused us to think, who on earth is this family that remains, and why? And so that was the spark for the idea. And then cut to, I think it was 5-6 months ago, they find the body of a Cherokee trans woman who's been missing for 6 years, buried beneath this chat. These piles, mountainous piles of toxic material, which of course added a whole nother and equally, if not more somber, layer to the whole project. So it became a project about the MMIP epidemic as well.
So I came to Ben and Yancey through a mutual friend who I just met at USC. I just started my first semester at the School of Cinematic Arts MFA program, and made it my top priority to find other natives in the school period. And this person connected me with Ben and Yancey. First meet, I'll never forget. I had to take from the road. I was at Dairy Queen. It was the whole thing. It's like an ongoing. There was a big Dairy Queen and a poster right behind me that I didn't even see. And the first thing that Yancey said was, "Are you at an actual Dairy Queen right now?" So it was a great starting off point. And we checked in again a while later, and they were just sort of sharing this idea that they had for the picture thing. And I don't remember how the question was presented, something about editing. And I immediately went into the program at USC, like, oh, this is what they teach us. We have to do this and this and that. And then I went, wait, are you asking me if I want to edit? And they both were kind of like, yeah, well, we wanted to see how you... I'm so glad I didn't go on a tangent like, I fucking hate editing. It's the worst thing. But yeah, I'm very much at this point where collaboration is key for all the things that I do. And there seemed to be a real push for education and giving Native students and filmmakers and artists an opportunity to learn. So I was all for it. Here I am today.
Well, I'll mention too that, yeah, we danced around the editing. We were like, I'm sure Leek was like, do they want a referral? Do they want me to be on the project? I don't know. And Yancey and I were being vague probably, but the cool thing was that, not only was she down to take a stab at the editing, but she was like, can I come? And we were like, yeah, like if you're down to do that, then you're clearly invested in the project here. So we were sold.
And collaboration is the name of the game on this project, right? We're the four of us, and there's been a couple of us that have been involved too. We're all assisting each other on the technical side of things, set up, and so it's really interesting to see this thing organically come together and really watch this team form and problem solve as things are popping up on these shoots. So, especially with you finding an online manual for one of the cameras and helping us through that.
YouTube.
Yep. And YouTube is magic. So, as we've been out there this week, and it's really, it's hitting me hard about this environmental impact on not just Pitcher itself, but the communities around. How is a story like this significant to the broader Native American communities here in Oklahoma and nationwide?
Well, what struck us about this story to begin with is, Pitcher is just an example of how marginalized people are often treated in America, obviously. And if you get out to Pitcher, it's just such a violent visual. I mean, if you ever have an opportunity, I recommend it. It's going to be remediated in about 50 years, so do it now. But right now, it's it's mountains of toxic waste. And as a West Virginian, the first thing that struck me is that, in West Virginia, all the strip mines are under fence. So if you want to see, destruction like that, you have to get permission from the coal company. Whereas Pitcher, you can get on 69 right now and drive through the middle of Pitcher, and you can see it. And so, when we saw it, we knew there was a story there. We knew first off, there were really two priorities for us. One is the fact that Pitcher is Quapaw Nation. And that's who should be telling this story. And so, a big part of Rena Flying Coyote Collective is helping to facilitate people to tell their own stories. And so we knew we wanted Quapaw Nation to be telling the story of what's going on at Pitcher. And then the second thing is just how incredible the Pitcher location is, because Quapaw Nation is the only tribe in America remediating a Superfund site. I mean, it is a very exceptional place because of that. And so that's really the story. It's self-determination, right? It's it's autonomy, it's sovereignty, it's all those things. And that's what we've heard over and over again from people throughout the Quapaw tribe, is that, nobody else is going to do this better because nobody else is going to be in it for the long haul. We've heard from person after person, we're going to be here forever. So we're going to be the people to clean up this mess. And it's an interesting story because of that. And it's the perspective that story should be told from.
How does the overall environmental and historical context of Pitcher reflect the larger issues in Native communities in Oklahoma, but also nationwide in North Dakota, Washington, and elsewhere where there's Native tribes located in lands regarding land, health, and sovereignty? I mean, this is an ongoing discussion on the federal level for all Native communities, I think, on Turtle Island, but also in Oklahoma, because there's such a huge component where we're all squished together.
Yeah, I'll take a try. I mean, and you mentioned, and we were talking off camera about this, that yeah, Oklahoma all of a sudden is this hub of nativeness. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the vast majority of those native nations and tribes that exist in Oklahoma aren't from here. We were all rounded up and put here. And we've taken ownership of it, which is great. So anyhow, I just wanted to throw that in. We were talking earlier about how many communities are out there. And I think there's a misconception that Oklahoma, again, is just one blob of Native people. But I think that does have something to do with an answer to your question, which is that, I mean, I think Pitcher itself is sort of reflects the history of the treatment of Native folks here, which is that we can be used essentially. And then, you know, I think this is actually a nice analogy, maybe not a nice one, but an appropriate analogy, if you will, which is that, so, you know, Quapaw land was used to manufacture these armaments for World Wars I and II. And it was stripped, and everything that was harmful was left behind. And then people vanished. And so Quapaw was left mulling over what to do with this and how to heal. Again, this is a project about Quapaw healing their tribe and their land. And so that's call that phase 1. And now we're in phase 2, where it's been discovered that this leftover chat actually has value. It can be used for things. It could be used to pave driveways. They have to coat it so that it's no longer toxic. But there's, you know, with decades and decades in between, all of a sudden this is an asset, and all of those same sort of external forces that exploited this land for benefit in the, you know, 30s, 40s, 50s, they're all now descending again.
They're coming back because something's worth something.
Yep, there's money.
There's money to be
There's
had,
money
yeah.
again, and I mean it's almost pyramid scheme-ish, like,
Right.
and Quapaw themselves would be at the bottom of this. They'd be the last ones to benefit financially, and they're taking steps to avoid that being the case. But that just goes to show you that Native people and the way we're perceived, there needs to be a dramatic paradigm shift, because there's this, folks think that they have the license to dismiss Native. I mean, you know, there are people out there who think Native people don't exist anymore.
Right.
And so we're trying to get over that hump of, we're not just, we're not there for your benefit. We're our own people, and in Quapaw's case, they're and I can't tell you how many people we've heard say that this week, like, you know, we're not going to give an inch. We are here to and yeah, they have to work with the EPA. They have to work with governmental agencies, but they're owning this. And I think that's how we get that's a step to get people to start looking at us in a different way.
Yeah. And while Quapaw will obviously be an example for other tribes, I sure hope they're an example for other communities everywhere in America. I mean, I've said this a lot while we've been shooting in picture. Mining communities, there's a lot of similarities in every single one of them. You know, that they've all been exploited. They all have a very strange relationship with their exploiter because there was prosperity that came with that exploitation. So yeah, I hope that Quapaw's efforts to be the first tribe cleaning up a Superfund site is something that extends to every community in America that needs that help, and shows that communities can do it on their own, and communities can do it on their own better than anyone else can do it because they know the problem best.
Yeah.
That really leads us into the next question is about, you know, what can tribes do to take ownership of this environmental cleanup, but also what are the obstacles that they're running into, either within their own communities or on the same federal level?
Well, I mean, I you know, I shouldn't speak to Quapaw's own, but I imagine there's some tribal politics involved, as there always are. But I'm sorry. Question again?
Yeah. So, you know, we've seen, because we sat down with one of the guests for the doc, and it's great to see that the tribes are making efforts to improve, to clean up. What can tribes do? Oh gosh, that's really.
I would say that the real, I mean, from what we've talked to folks in Quapaw Nation, it is such a long-term effort. I mean, they are optimistically ballparking it at 50 years to clean up the chat piles that are there, to be able to effectively use what's there that can be used, because now it's being, to Ben's point, because it's profitable, it's being processed back into asphalt, it can be used in roads, but some of it can't be used at all. And so they've also got to move that to a place where it can be stored almost like nuclear waste in perpetuity.
Yeah.
And so it's that commitment, and that's hard for any community to make a 50-year commitment to do anything. And so that is what I see as just a huge factor in it. And it's what Ben said, that every person we've talked to has said, we're here forever, we're going to take on this commitment. And that's I think why they're doing it so effectively, because everyone seems to be of that mindset that, yeah, it's going to take a long time, but nobody's going to be here longer than we are, so we're going to do it.
Well, and it took Yancey saying some shit to make me think of something to say. And you know, we were down at so one of the interviews we did for the film was with Pamela Jumper Thurman, and she's actually Cherokee. But we discovered when we were here, and it's actually Yancey who put this together, but the runoff from that waste at Quapaw makes its way directly via tributary to the lake that Pam lives on in Cherokee country. So part of this is about, you know, how do we come together as Cherokee and Quapaw have joined forces to address this, because, you know, it not only affects Quapaw, but it affects Cherokee people who live down there and anybody who lives down there, native or not. So it's and you know, it's one of our goals is coalition building, and I think that's a perfect example of coalition building.
And it's interesting because non-natives, they look at land as reaping rewards. It owes them something. For Indigenous people, we're part of the land, and the land is part of us. There's a connection to it. It's in our DNA, and there's respect there. How have environmental health issues like those in picture impacted the cultural and spiritual bonds Native peoples have with their ancestral lands? I mean, there's got to be some disruption because it's been being trashed on, you know?
Yeah, this is something we heard from an elder we spoke to just yesterday, and she was the first chairwoman of Quapaw Nation, and Grace, God bless her, wonderful interview. But she was talking about how, you know, wouldn't it be great if we could use picture, because our elders need a place to be able to walk the land and enjoy the land and see the flora and the fauna, and that's been robbed of them because picture cannot be inhabited for people to live, cannot be inhabited for retail, cannot be used essentially. So one of their greatest resources, which they should be able to use, because you look at old pictures of picture, and pardon my pronunciation, but you look at those old pictures and it was a beautiful place. I mean, it was such a beautiful place, and I'm sure it meant a lot to a lot of people, and I know it still does. You know, I asked one of the environmental scientists, you know, are there folks, you know, who've grown up with knowing nothing but chat piles? Will anybody miss the chat piles when they're gone? And he immediately said, no, no one will miss the chat piles. It will be a day we all celebrate when they are remediated. And so that's it. It's a beautiful piece of land that's just been robbed from.
What was your first impression of seeing these piles? Because this is still very fresh for you, being there.
Yeah, well, I live in Albuquerque, and so being here in Oklahoma, which is pretty much flat, and then turning around and seeing those huge piles, it's stark. It really jumps out at you, and just my internal child immediately wanted to climb to the top, right? Like, oh God, that'd be so great to climb up there and get a shot from up there, and the wheel started cranking. And then I think that was probably one of the first conversations that I heard, where people are talking about when they were kids, they were playing there, and everybody was warned to stay away from the pile, stay away from the surrounding water. So I know I'm not alone in that immediate urge to want to go and play and explore. But sadly, it's very dangerous and very toxic.
Well, and I will, you know, this was Alika's first time seeing these piles, as it was for Yancey and myself 2 years ago, and we had the same reaction. But I happened to be, you know, we've been in multiple cars with the crew, and I happened to be in the same car with Alika the first time we drove into Pitcher this time around. And that first chat pile on your left, as you're coming from the Missouri side, shows up, and Alika's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "We're here." Like, because this thing is enormous.
Yeah.
And it's like your human brain doesn't even process, even though you kind of know where we're going. That's how the immensity of what exists in picture.
These are like 8-story building tall.
It's
mounds.
insane.
This isn't like a 30-foot mound. These are
Yeah.
enormous.
Yeah. And the memories aren't from some bygone era. This is a couple decades ago, people talking about, well, yeah, I played Little League at the baseball field there, pitcher, and there was a chat pile on the first baseline. And between games when we weren't playing, all the kids would roll up the chat pile, and that's what you'd do. That was just part of the life there. So it's pretty amazing.
They've been there for so long, too. There's lots of archival imagery up. We were in the environmental office, and it looked like a picture from maybe the 40s, 50s. And they're there, the chat piles just sitting there, untouched, unmoved. And we're talking about, oh, well, tornadoes, we have wind. Shouldn't it be blown away? And just having these long conversations about the structure of how sturdy they must be, seeing as they've been there for so long.
Yeah, and that's such an unpleasant reminder to your point about connection to the land. I mean, these chat piles were left there because folks had the foresight in the 40s to think, oh, this can be valuable someday, and I don't care if we leave it on the surface for 100 years. If it has some value someday, we're going to exploit that value when it does. And that's exactly what's happening.
Let's talk about something else and shift gears a little bit. Can you tell us about Loyal to the Soil, and what are the themes and stories do you want to explore?
Sure. Well, I don't know how you're going to cut this, but you kind of just segued into Loyal perfectly with your question about Native relationship to land. Loyal to the Soil is explores the topic of Native military service, and it was actually a friend of ours, Jim Pepper Henry, who was telling us a story about his uncle who enlisted, and enlisted actually as Hispanic, as Mexican, I think, because at the time there was a ban on Native people drinking in the military, and he wanted to be able to have a beer with his comrades, and so that's what he did. And in telling this story to Jim, his uncle, he was. I think Jim asked him, so why did you do that? Why did you enlist? And the response was, well, I was being loyal to the soil. And when it comes down to it, and again, Native people are not a monolith. Everybody has a different reason for serving. But there seems to be a pretty consistent through line that ultimately what you are protecting is the land on which your ancestors grew up, the land on which you grew up, the land on which your descendants will grow up. And that certainly applies to Native folks. I think it can apply to anybody who grew up here. The other thing I would mention is that, we've been talking about Picture some, and yes, it is a ghost town and a wasteland, and we are hoping that is remedied. The one thing that is maintained always is the Veterans Memorial that sits right in the middle of that town, and it's Quapaw that maintains that memorial, because that is how revered military service is in Native communities. Because we are a society of warriors, even though, as we've mentioned, we don't want to be portrayed as just that.
Right.
But and that's what we're protecting is the land. And before I pass it off to others to talk about this, I'd be remiss not to mention Joe here, who is a veteran himself, and has been really part of the team in putting together that film. So thank you, Joe, for your guidance. As you know, my grandfather and all four of his brothers, whom I mentioned earlier, served in World War II. So that's my reason for wanting to make this film. I'm not a veteran myself, so Joe has really helped to guide us. So nice. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, that's right. The film came about. It's something that Ben had always kind of been kicking around because of course, his grandfather's service, and it's always an idea he really wanted to work on. And We were lucky enough, we screened the film Imagining the Indian at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. as part of We the People's Before. And they had a kind of a dinner gala beforehand, and Chris Eyre was being honored. It was pretty exciting because I'm a big fan, so I was fanboying out pretty hard. And I got pretty lucky because I got to sit right next to him. And so I sat next to Chris, and for about an hour, I talked high school football with him, which was exactly what I wanted to talk. And at the end of it, he was kind enough to ask, what are you all thinking about doing next? And I said, well, Ben would really love to be able to tell the story about Native American military service. There's the stat that always gets floating around that, of course, Natives serve at a higher per capita rate than any other ethnic group. But then there's also the stat that doesn't get floated around, which is the fact that Native veterans are the most underserved group of veterans in America. And so I was talking about this with Chris, and Chris was excited about it too. And we were able to get Chris to come on board. He's going to co-direct the project with Ben. And so, yeah, we're in production on it now, and it's something that means a lot to all of us. I mean, my father was a Vietnam veteran. My grandfather was a World War II veteran. It's something that, to Ben's point about the Pitcher Veterans Memorial, every community we've been to, one of the first things you see is the Veterans Memorial. You see the reverence for veterans. And so it's a story that needs to be told.
Yeah. And if you go on the RFCC website, we're in production. There's a little 12-minute work in progress that give you some notion of what the film will be ultimately.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that answers part of my next question.
Oh,
So
sorry. Did I plug too soon, Joe?
you, I say this often in the podcast with the guests. You're having a good interview when the guest just kind of flows into the next question. So it's very natural, right? The impact of this film, both with Pitcher, because I think there's a connection between non-Native communities and Native communities to these projects. What's your hope for the impact on those separate communities? What are you hoping their takeaways could be?
Of the picture?
Sorry. With Loyal to the Soil.
No, with Loyal to the Soil. Okay. We've officially shifted gears. I get it.
Watch the bouncy ball, Ben.
No, I doubled up. I jumped back to a conversation we had about with Pitcher, how the mining communities out east could really connect with this story. Back to this one.
Yeah, no, I think as we mentioned along the way here, Rena Flying Coyote Collective, and this is a term that Yancey coined for good reason, because it is what we intend to do. We're a call to action company. And with Imagining the Indian, it was to get folks to join us in the effort to tackle Native mascotting and bring it down once and for all. We have a QR code we pop up on screen with resources that people can use to join that fight. And with Loyal to the Soil, it really was what we found is that that there's a disconnect between IHS, between Indian Health Services and the VA in many cases. I don't want to make a blanket statement, but anecdotally, Alika and her husband Hashim joined us, Joe, last night at Pawnee Homecoming, and there we were welcomed by James Riding and his family. James, who is already in the film, we've already interviewed him, is a Vietnam vet. And currently lives in Phoenix, Arizona, Tempe, Arizona, with his wife, Ida. James is from Pawnee. Obviously, his wife is Santa Ana Pueblo. They would much rather live in either rural Oklahoma or rural New Mexico. But because he has beaten multiple myeloma twice due to Agent Orange exposure, they're in Phoenix because they have to be. They need to be. So the goal, and one of our interviewees for that film actually works for the VA, and her passion project is to try to get a VA liaison into every IHS across the country, so that Yancey mentioned earlier that not only do Native people serve most per capita, but there's data-driven research to indicate that we are least served when we return, when our veterans return. So that really is the goal, if you will, the tangible goal of the project. I'm sure Yancey, you want to say more.
Yeah, I mean, to your question about broad applicability, Joe, I mean, yes, this is a movie about Native American military service, but I think active duty service people and veterans who watch it are going to see it as a movie about military service. Yeah. And that's something that I've seen, you know, my dad toted me around to American Legions and VFWs and AMVETs. And it's something you see when you're out and about is that, you know, when you're in those places, the barriers of race, creed, color, ethnicity, et cetera, break down because their service comes first. And so I think that's where the broad applicability is going to come from Loyal to the Soil, is that every person who served is going to be able to identify with these stories because they understand it.
How does Rena Flying Coyote Collective's mission align with the stories told in your documentaries, but particularly those addressing Native representation, social and environmental issues and justices? And
yeah, I mean, I think we want to tackle all of that.
Take it on.
Yeah, we're well, and you know, Yancey and I are. Yancey just spent yesterday morning wrapping up a grant application. We're trying to build capacity. You know, right now, Yancey and I are wearing many hats. But the vision has always been to you know, as we mentioned earlier, not only do our own work and do that as diligently as and responsibly as we possibly can, but if we can build the organization to help other storytellers, you know, tackle those very issues, create a network here of people who have a project about the environment going on, or you know, we're thinking conceptualizing a Native fashion documentary to highlight the really exciting world of Native fashion. And so we're, you know, this is kind of a non-answer, and I apologize for that, but you know, we want to do whatever we can to do good for Indian country. Really, I'll leave it at that. Let somebody else jump in.
Yeah, Rena Flying Coyote Collective's mission is to enable Native storytellers to, most importantly, tell their own stories. And so that's our entire process is centered around that. You know, so for the picture doc that we worked on, you know, Dr. Derek Jennings, who was Quapaw and Sac and Fox, he kicked off every interview because he is the person to tell that story. He is the person to get that story out best. And so, you know, we're there to facilitate, we're there to help. We want to be a part of it. But our focus and our mission is to enable folks to tell their own stories. And that's what we're really working hard to do. And like I said, we follow that process everywhere we go. So,
and how cool, just briefly, how cool to be in a situation where we've got a bunch of Native people around, and the issue is to let the Quapaw person tell the story. Usually there's one Native, so that one Native they'll tell the Native story. So that I think that's an exciting sign of the times and the work we're doing, is that we get to defer to Derek, even though there are a bunch of Native people in the room. That's awesome.
For our listeners, in what ways can people, especially the Native community, advocate for their rights in today's environments? This is a question for all three of you, both environmentally but also socially, given what's going on today.
Well, Alika is doing a lot of that work in her filmmaking.
Yeah.
So yeah, please jump in.
Yeah, I think one thing that can be done, and I would like to see a lot more of, is just the normalization of Indigenous voices and opinion. I see time and time again, whether it's a podcast or it's a roundtable discussion, where there isn't a Native person leading the discussion. And then if a Native person goes, wait a minute, one of us should be talking, not you, it's immediately like, oh, okay, that person's getting out of control. Let's figure out how to settle them down.
Uppity Indian.
Exactly. So yeah, I would love to see a concerted effort to fight against settler futurity, meaning that it doesn't have to be the expected future where capitalism is the norm, where the way that white supremacy rules is the norm. Like, entertain the idea where that is turned on its head and allow for Native people to voice that and speak that and express that without being shut down immediately.
From a non-Native perspective, it's that I want people to be real loud about their allyship. It's something we talked to Pamela Jumper Thurman about, and she was saying, we need folks being loud on social media. We need them being loud out in the streets. We need them being loud everywhere. Like I mentioned, I'm from a community in rural Appalachia that has a lot of problems on its own, and we need allies. We need them if we're ever going to get anywhere else than where we are today. We need allies, and I always say that if you want to have an ally, you have to be an ally. And so I encourage my folks to be allies, and I want them to be loud about it because, collective action is what's going to get us all to a better place.
I think it's a good segue because you just took my next question. How important are allies, especially non-Native organizations or communities, in supporting Native-led efforts to address environmental and social issues, but also educational issues? Because as you mentioned early on in our discussion, so much is affecting youth. And sometimes there's not the support or infrastructure there because they live in rural communities and their families are broken up, or they live with grandma and aunties or whatever, and they're not getting the support. They're not getting it from the institutions that they go to. So my question is kind of wide.
Well, we haven't talked about this yet, right? One thing they could do if they want to learn about Native mascotting is go to PBS Learning Media come fall. One thing that we have talked about this.
We mentioned educational curriculum. Please.
I'm going to go into it a little more. There will be, and we plan to do this with all of our projects. So for Loyal to the Soil, we'll replicate it. But housed on PBS Learning Media, there will be a K through 12 curriculum, free to any teacher, student, parent, coach, pastor, that is interested in figuring out how to talk to kids about this. And again, it is, it is especially the youth that we're looking to get to as early as possible with this sort of thing. With imagining, as we've toured with it and done screenings and panels and et cetera, we've had kids come out as young as 5 years old with their parents from that movie. And we just assumed, the kids were on their Switch the whole time, and it was really mom and dad who wanted to see the thing. But to our surprise, and we're thrilled about it, those kids generally come out and are like, my gosh, why would people do that? Like that's just wrong. That sort of thing is just wrong. And so I think I've strayed completely from the question, I think, but Yancey or Alika will save me here. But I think that and my sister would tell you the same thing. All of the brilliant Native women psychologists who are in imagining would tell you the same thing. That reaching young people with this sort of thing before they've been indoctrinated by broader society is really one of our most important goals.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, Imagining the Indian starts with about a 30-minute primer on this continent before and after Europeans touched the shores. And it starts with that primer because Ben knew that we had to give our audience that primer, or else would they ever understand how we got to a point where it was okay to have Native American mascots. And that primer was so important for me. I mean, I grew up in West Virginia public schools. We did not get that education in West Virginia public schools, and I know a lot of folks don't get it. And so that's why one of the pillars of Rena Flying Coyote Collective is educational curriculum. To Ben's point, we want to reach folks at their most impressionable. We want to reach them before they've been indoctrinated to be awful, to be honest with you. And so, if you reach them early, you give them a little bit of sugar with their medicine. That PBS Learning Media curriculum is a video curriculum. It's easy to watch. It's easy to digest. It's easy to understand. And maybe we have a chance with them, if you reach them early.
So a little bit of a shift. You're all filmmakers at this table here. What is it about film storytelling that has really drawn you in? What is it about this craft?
Who wants to start?
I mean, it's cool. Like it makes us look cool, and it's cool. It was always a part of my childhood. Just, I got sat in front of the television for hours and hours. So it kind of became the way that the framework at which I understood my own existence. Being Afro-Indigenous, having examples of, not necessarily good examples, but what it means to be Black in the world, what it means to be Native in the world, and then carrying that with me, going to predominantly white schools, and having these conversations with my parents. It was thrilling as a child to kind of have that to contrast what I understood to be reality, and then what I later understood to be actual reality. So it's the gift that keeps on giving in terms of, I think, how many times in the various ways you can reach people at different stages in their life, starting conversations. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is creating films that spark the conversation, to start a movement, to start the mobility in communities that otherwise wouldn't be talking about themselves. My tribe is very small. Caddo has less than 5,000 members, I think. So it's very rare I come across anything that has to do with Caddo people. But when I do, let me tell you, it's a celebration.
Well, I think also, I think Alika said it perfectly. It's cool. And by that, I mean, I think everybody at this table loves film. Not that what we're doing is particularly cool, but it's just it's a wonderful medium, I think, to communicate. And in this day and age, a really important one, because whether we like it or not, we learn visually. Increasingly, we learn visually just because of the world and where it's going. And as somebody who doesn't even have a Facebook account, I might wish it were otherwise, but it's not. And so I think, attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. People are finding it more and more difficult to read a textbook in the TikTok era. So I think pairing film as entertainment with film as a tool to educate is now the right time to be doing that sort of thing.
I mean, we're all aware of society's ills, and most of us feel very powerless to do anything about it. Storytelling generally, and filmmaking particularly as a medium, allows you to have some power in that, allows you to feel like you're doing something, allows you to reach a broad swath of people, which is really what's most effective for me. I mean, like I said, I was an attorney and I was reaching one person at a time. And there's satisfaction in that, of course. There's satisfaction in doing anything good in this world, but there's an incredible level of satisfaction in reaching a lot of people at once and hopefully helping to make society a better place.
For those inspired and drawn to your mission, what are some of the meaningful ways they can support or get involved with Rena Flying Coyote Collective?
Yeah, Yancey's our PR. Yancey's our PR rep.
I can get involved in a variety of ways. We have all our contact information up on our websites and on our socials, but we encourage folks to reach out to us. We'd love to have folks come be part of a project, from either directly serving with us on a project to just supporting via social media the projects we're working on. It helps so much to spread the word. We talk about that a lot, and that you can make a lot of difference, of course, if you're leading high level policy change in legislatures and such, but you can make a big impact on the world just by sitting down at your own family's dinner table and talking about something that is important. Because if you reach that person next to you, maybe they jump on their TikTok and they make a video that goes viral about that thing you just talked to them about. And so we understand that one person reaches 10 people, reaches 1,000 people, et cetera. So that's how we want you to be involved. Holler at us. We've been so lucky and so blessed. The folks we work with, the interviewees we work with, to a person, they all say, if there's ever anybody you run across who needs help with mascotting or with anything they're working on, holler at us. Let us know. We want to help. I mean, they're participating in our projects because they want to help. And so they offer that help up as well. So please, we encourage everybody. Give Rena Flying Coyote Collective a holler. We'd love to hear from you.
What's next for our FCC?
That's a good question. everything we've been talking about for this for this hour, and you know, bunch of fundraising too, more grant applications, and but yeah, I mean, as Yancey says, we never really kind of know what's next, and we're trying to get ourselves to a place where we can take on more of those next. I mean, yeah, and really, so many of our connections. I mean, the reason we are sitting here in your studio right now is kind of organic connection. You know, we ran into Joe, and Joe knows you, and here we are, and that's happened so many times over the course of both making the film that's out now and kind of tackling what we're tackling through RFCC.
Yeah, you know, currently we're still knee deep in Boil to the Soil and the Picture Project. But yeah, we've got a couple of projects on the horizon. We started actually kind of broaching them with some of the interviews we did with Picture. But, you know, I think Ben mentioned earlier, we'd love to do a project about Native fashion. I mean, it's something that just really interests us, interests some of our board members at RFCC, Rena Flying Coyote Collective. And then we've got another project we're developing about, the terminology is different because we've started talking about it. We were calling it a cryptid documentary, or cryptids in Native America documentary. Some people call it a paranormal activity in Native America. Some folks, and I love this description. We had an interviewee say, you know, some folks will call it myth, but her aunt always told her that if there was a Cherokee word for it, it was real. And so that's a project we're developing as well, because there's such an interest around that right now, and I think it's something that really expands around. Another one that we've talked a lot about that I think we're definitely going to get into production is something around tourism throughout Indian country. It's something that really interests us. It's something we started talking about at Virginia Tech. We were there to screen Imagining the Indian, and we were actually invited there by their tourism department, because she was using the film as a tool for tourism. And that's something we hadn't even thought about. We know it's a tool for policy change, but she was using it as a tool for tourism. So that's something we're also developing. So yeah, we're developing. We got a few things in a few irons in the fire, as they say.
I got something to pitch you guys later off camera.
Please.
What are each of you working on independently? Alika, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, I am wrapping up post-production for my short film Cicada. It was funded in part by Vision Maker Media and Native Arts and Culture Foundation, their LIFT New Emerging Artist program. It is about an Afro-Indigenous hacker who is, you know, fighting against the man. And that has turned into a art piece that I'm working with Black Public Media and the Johnny Carson Emerging Media Arts Center at University of Lincoln, Nebraska.
Wow.
Yes. And that project is basically a deep dive into Cicada the film, where we will explore some of the deeper topics with the characters, either through interactive media, cinematic VR, or all of the above. But yeah, I'm real excited about that.
Yeah, I don't know that I have much here. The RFCC is pretty much a full-time job. I am working have been for a couple of years on a limited series, which would be fairly large in scope, and is a Cherokee Trail of Tears story, but not told in the traditional way that most of us have learned the Cherokee Trail of Tears. It's not a death march story. It's much more comprehensive. And I'm working on that with a Cherokee writer and producer. So we're hopeful about that. Other than that, I'm pretty much doing the best I can to help raise 2 nephews. That takes a whole hell of a lot of time. Who just got named, actually, this Sunday, past Sunday at Sundance. So Finian, or Homa, and Oliver, or Huapanaya, which is also my name.
And yeah, the most important other project I'm working on is my 14-month-old, Giselle Riviere Mestamarca Burns. But I'm also developing a project called Historically Black West Virginia. Tougaloo University put together a list of all the sundown towns in America. And in West Virginia, there's one sundown county, and I grew up in it. And so we're putting together a project about the fact that, you know, Carter Woodson, the father of Black history, is from Huntington, West Virginia. Katherine Johnson, who got us to the moon, went to West Virginia State University and West Virginia University. There's so much incredible Black history in West Virginia, and it's a project about the fact that we could lift up all of Appalachia by better recognizing that incredible Black history.
Joe, but how about you? What are you working on independently? Got coming up?
The other podcast, 5 Link Questions, that's in full production right now. So that's going on. April of 2026. I'm starting a new film festival in Fargo, North Dakota. So
Congrats.
at the time of this airing, we'll be taking applications for short films. So at some point we'll have information for folks to jump on board. Otherwise, storyboarding different films along the way too. So yeah.
All right. What else you got for us, Joe?
I think that wraps this up here. Ben, Yancey, Alika, thank you so much for joining us and sitting down here in this amazing studio. It's great to actually sit down here.
Can I get one thing on record before
Absolutely.
we go?
Please.
So, shout out to Anna Johnson, whose hat I am
Yes.
wearing, the
Yes.
Landback hat,
Yes.
and has been part of my uniform for like going on 2.5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, I actually found the hat in the Plains Art Museum when Joe was there, and Anna was nice enough to give Joe 2 more copies of the hat so that I can wear them to death. One is already on its way out. But Yancey now has a country shit hat, which is awesome. And I'm worried that he's trying to take over my hat uniform game here.
It's a strong contender.
So I just wanted on record that Yancey is challenging my hat game.
Right on. Well, Anna Johnson is my co-producer for this this film festival coming up. So shout out to Ann Johnson as well too. Yes.
And as Joe said, thank you to all 3 of you for coming into Tulsa and doing what you're doing and continuing to inform the world of what's going on in Indian country on a global scale. And hopefully people pay attention and go check out Rena Flying Coyote Collective for all the great work you're doing and getting the word out.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
How?
Howie.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through Indigenous art and creativity. Stay inspired and keep exploring with us on Beyond the Art.
Remember to subscribe and follow us for more exclusive interviews, insightful discussions, and stories that ignite your artistic imagination.
Until next time, continue to unlock your limitless potential with Beyond the Art. Thank you for listening.